Hello, everyone. Welcome to Author Spotlight. This is brought to you by Victorious U Press, and we come to you on Fridays at noon to speak to authors and take a deep dive into their books. I'm Leslie Cottrell. I am a book writing coach and the COO at Victorious U Press, which is a boutique publishing services company. And so we are going to bring Dr. Ebony Stone onto the stage and have a great discussion with her today. Hello, Ebony. How are you?
I am great. How you doing, Leslie? Thanks so much for having me.
Super. I am, as you know, I'm so excited that you're here. I want to tell our viewers just a little bit about you, and I'll read this so I don't forget anything. A quick bio on Ebony Stone. She's widely known for her excellence, her resilience, and inspirational work. Her first book, The Power of the Pause, when a female executive can no longer hide behind high functioning anxiety and depression, delves into her personal journey, professional ascent, navigating mental and emotional challenges along the way. Each narrative is skillfully intertwined with a valuable lesson, culminating in a beacon of hope through her transformative framework, offering guidance to those facing similar struggles. I love that, Ebony. So, what would you add after having heard that bio about you? That's a fun little fun fact about you that we wouldn't know from just listening to what I read.
Oh, fun facts. I love it.
Yeah.
So get personal and get away from
Yeah.
kind of the professional. So one of the things that I like to share, a lot of people know this about me. I have a thing, Leslie, for shoes. I can't even tell you how many pair I have, but I also have this obsession with being barefoot. So I I love like a good stiletto. Last night I was at a charity event and I grabbed a nice stiletto, but I love the feeling of the earth underneath my feet. I love being grounded. And so I think that's a fun fact about me, right? Tons of shoes, but I also love not wearing them, right? I love
Yeah.
to wear them and to take them off.
That's the funnest fun fact ever. I love it. And my mother also had a thing for shoes. She
Mm,
had the nickname Imelda Marcos, which she did not care for.
okay.
But she also loved to go barefoot. And I would say I'm not in your camp. I'd love to be barefoot and I would do it 24/7 if I could. I don't really have a thing for shoes, but I have a deep respect for shoes, having watched how carefully curated my mom's collection of shoes were. So that's very cool.
Yeah.
I was so excited and intrigued by the title of this book because pause is, well, it's something that was really forced on me in 2016. I was actually bit by a horsefly
Mm,
and contracted Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, and unfortunately, ultimately, as a complication of Lyme disease, got Bell's palsy.
oh,
So
wow. Okay.
that pause was forced on me. So the title really grabbed me. But there are a myriad of reasons for someone to need the pause. And if you're someone who suffers with anxiety, depression, this book is really going to speak to you. And after reading it, I can't wait to turn more readers on to the power that's in the pages of this book, Ebony.
Thank you. Yeah,
I,
I'm sorry. You talk about the pause. It's a very, very interesting concept, especially though for those, I'm sorry, who suffer from anxiety. I just recently found the language to put around it. Um, I think oftentimes we don't even have the language to understand what is happening to us and in our brains, right? And
true.
so once I found the language, it was like, okay, you need to take a pause. I could figure out what to do next because I understood what I was experiencing. Until then, I didn't know what I was experiencing, nor did I have the language to even communicate it or figure out how to fix it.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like you to tell us why you wrote this book, but also why you wrote it the way that you did. And by that, I mean, why is it that you chose not to hold anything back? Why did you want to let the world see all your challenges, see all your harsh moments? Um, my admiration for you is significant
Thank you.
because you made that choice. You didn't play it safe. You know, you intentionally pulled the curtain back on what you had experienced in your life. And you and I both know you didn't need to do that. You could have written a great book around this subject without sharing the way you did. So I'm so anxious to hear what drove you to not just write the book, but write it the way you wrote it.
The answer I think is simple. I just wanted to be authentic. I wanted my story to be told so that others felt safe in telling theirs. In my journey through therapy, my therapist would share with me, like, you're not alone, you're not by yourself. And I always, up until recently, felt like I was. And once I started to realize that I was not by myself, I figured if I could be courageous enough to share, then others would too. And then this stigma that is around things associated with mental health, I can do my part in starting to bring down the walls so people can talk about it. People suffer in silence and they don't have to. I've spoken to multiple people since I wrote the book that would say things to me as simple as, man, I didn't know you were sitting in your car. I was in mine too. Right. That's powerful. There are people that I know who have told me I've spent hours in my car. I don't know that they would have found the courage to say that if I didn't share. And I felt that God was leading me to share. And it was scary, quite frankly, to share.
Yeah.
And so there were some things that I held back, not about myself, but I held some things back about my family, right? They didn't decide to go on this journey. So when
Yeah.
they start to tell their stories, they can tell their stories. But other than that, I wanted to be as authentic as I possibly could to hopefully help someone else.
So a couple of things really stood out to me in what you just said. The first one is that loneliness. And in the last 2 weeks, I have had 4 surprising conversations from women that are executives, some of color, not all of color, who spoke of this deep seated, hollow sense of aloneness.
Yeah,
Sometimes not just at work, but it followed them home because it was so big at work.
yeah,
When they got back home, even if they had a good, solid family life relationship, that sense of aloneness was getting bigger and
yeah,
bigger until they addressed what was going on in their life.
yeah, yeah. So especially, I'm going to speak from the perspective of an executive woman, right? You're constantly moving, you're accomplishing things, um, and I found that I got really good at compartmentalizing, right? And so there's this thing that hurt, and I'm gonna put it over there, and I'm gonna keep moving, and I'll put this over there, and I'll keep moving. But you need to heal through those things, and everybody has an expectation of you. And I think that as women in general, everybody has an expectation of us. There's an expectation at work. There's an expectation from, in my case, my husband. There's an expectation from the children. There's an expectation from friends. There's an expectation from everybody. And you're giving and giving and giving. And you get to a point where you don't feel like anyone is giving to you, or you can't even feel that people are giving. Because now that I've slowed down, I found out that they are. I just wasn't allowing it. My husband said to me, "Baby, you can't keep saying you need help and then you keep doing the thing. Like, let me help. Get out of the way." Um, but I think it's the way the world kind of programs us right now in our society, right? You have to go to school, you have to get the good grades, you have to get the good job, then you have to raise the good family, and your kids are supposed to do that. And so there's never time to just stop and figure out who you are. So that sense of loneliness, I think, comes from just not even having an opportunity to sit with self.
I agree. And I think that that expectation that you were speaking of makes us terrified of taking a pause because we think if we do that one time, we're never going to catch back up.
Yep. Yep. And we talk about competition from a very early age. We talk about our educational system and how we're competing on a global scale. And when in reality, I believe there's one person that we're competing with constantly, and that's ourselves. Because I truly believe that what God has for you is for you. And so, as long as you're trying to learn and evolve and just competing with yourself, you're fine. We should be celebrating the successes of others, not trying to constantly compete to beat others. And then that gives you time to evaluate yourself.
Absolutely. I know that therapy was such an important component of your journey of self discovery and your healing. And I'm always curious to get a little bit deeper in that when I'm speaking to a woman of faith. Because you talk about expectations, there's an expectation that we don't need it because we are women of faith. What do you mean you need to go to therapy? You should be able to pray your way through it and worship your way through it. And that's simply not the case. And that is not because your faith isn't strong enough. It's because God gives us so many tools in our healing, and that's one of them.
Yes.
How was that decision for you? Was it? Do you think it was more difficult because you're a Christian woman, or not?
Absolutely. So not this particular time, but in general, yes. So not only am I a Christian, I am the daughter of two ministers, right? And so people expect you to just pray your way through it. Like you're good. Somehow I think people think my parents being ministers solidifies my faith when it's a very personal journey. And so initially when I was young, and I would say, dare I say, immature, I was like, no, I don't need a therapist. Now I recognize that God gives us all types of tools to use. No one would ever question going to the doctor because you have a fever. No one would ever question going to the doctor because you broke your ankle. And so now it is beyond me why people question going to a professional because something is off mentally. It's all health, whether people don't question going to the pastor when you're struggling spiritually, which is
Yes.
also an expert helping you.
Mhm.
So I think in all areas of our lives, God has also given us experts to help us along the way. And so that's how I see it now. And it is extremely rewarding to hear so many other people say, yes, I believe that as well. And have people come and ask me, can you help me get in therapy? And I'm like, absolutely, I can. I'm not a therapist. I can't help you, but I can recommend people. I can tell you where to go in the book, in the back of the book, there are resources to go to look for therapists. And so I think we're turning a corner. But as far as my faith, that's what I believe. God has given me experts and I need to use them.
Absolutely. Such a good analogy. Thank you for sharing that with us. Um, One of the things that I really appreciate about your book, about your style of writing, is that I don't know if you're familiar with Lisa Nichols or not, but as she is working with women who want to write and speak to make millions, which is her credo, she speaks frequently about not standing in your story, standing on your story.
Mm,
Sometimes people don't even know what that means, but when you speak from a place of healing, you do understand what that means. When you're standing on your story, you're now above it, looking back, looking down, and reaching a hand out to those that are still behind you. When
yes.
you're standing in your story, you're still in the thick of it, and you haven't healed. And your book is a shining example of standing on the story. So I'm glad that you waited till the time that you did to share it, because you were able to do that.
Had I tried to share in previous moments, it would have been an utter mess. Like if you read the book, there's a part in the book where I am taking my phone and I'm making notes in my phone, trying to justify taking care of myself. The notes don't even make sense. And I shared them the way I shared them because they were absolutely exactly what was in my phone, to just say when I was in that space, I wasn't ready. But I needed someone, there's somebody that needs to see that, to say, okay, this is where I am and I can get out of it. But I couldn't have shared in those moments. It wouldn't have made sense. I would have just been blubbering and people probably would have been more confused, and it would have just it would have been a mess. I've always enjoyed writing, so I could have gotten something on the page,
Sure.
but I don't think it would have been as helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you are a very good writer. So I'm
Thank
sure whatever you wrote would have been great, but this is way beyond great. It's exemplary.
thank you.
Um, I'd like to read from your book, if I may.
Yes.
This really stood out to me. Before we went live today, I was saying that I saw myself in a lot of your writing. And this one, I have the chills as I'm looking at my screen here, getting ready to read it. As I reflect on my life, the hyper overdrive response has always been there. I didn't see it as a response to anxiety until I started my healing journey, but that's exactly what it was. I would do things like, decide I had to try to plan an entire family reunion on my own because I needed to be in control of something. When my daughter left for school, I devised a plan to buy all the things, pack the car, unpack the car, decorate the room, etc., down to the dollar and the hour. It's not just because I'm an organized person, it's because I felt like I was losing control and anxiety started to set in. So I grabbed hold of anything I could control and overdid it. These events usually went something like this. Something happened. I felt an emotion I didn't like. I either felt like I didn't know how to express myself or couldn't express myself in that moment. Then something continues and I become overwhelmed and afraid of the outcome. I feel myself start to spiral. My heart rate increases. I get hot. My thoughts are racing. Sometimes I can't catch my breath. Anxiety has set in. I think, how do I stop this? You've got to get control, Ebony. I find something that I can control. I take control of anything and everything I can in an unreasonable way, doing everything myself.
Yep. Everything. So, um, anybody who has a child approaching senior in high school or has been recently in this social media world has probably joined some of these social media groups to tell you everything you need to do for a dorm room. And they're a bit out of control. But you see them and you're like, oh, this is gorgeous. I think about when I went to college, it was like, no, I really, there were four of us who got in the car with my things and got me to college, and it was more than enough. No, now these kids have U-Hauls and it's crazy. But I see it and it's just in the back of my mind. But my daughter was leaving and I didn't like that feeling. I was
Right.
like, what? And she's going to be on the other side of the world, the other side of the country. I can't control it. I can't tell her when she's coming in. I can't tell her when she should eat. I don't know. And then what really starts to set in is like, have you prepared her? Well, I'm going to prepare her. And so I spent an ungodly amount of time preparing. I had checklists, and we were literally, who can say, I'm almost embarrassed, but who can say that on the day of move in, you're the first car in the line? We literally were the first car in line, let me see, 8.5, 9 hours away from home at 6 o'clock in the morning. We were the first car in line. We got inside of the room and she was just like, I'll be all right. Mom's got it. She didn't try to do anything. And I heard her have a conversation with her friends and she said, my mom's extra. She'll take care of it. I'm like, wow. Now reflecting on that, it wasn't about taking care of her. It was about taking care of me and
Yeah.
trying to push that anxiety down. Because if I was really trying to take care of her, I would have allowed her to the space to step into this new journey, no matter how uncomfortable for me. Right. But I take control. I just start taking control of things because that pushes the anxiety. It pushes it down. It doesn't push it away and
Right.
it doesn't solve anything. It just gives me a place that I'm comfortable, whether it's healthy for me or not. Sometimes we go to really unhealthy places because it's comfortable. It's comfortable for me to just be in control. So give me something and I'll just control it.
Yeah.
And I've done it my whole life.
Me
My
too.
whole
Me too. Yeah, me too. And you're right. It pushing it down doesn't solve anything, but pushing it down makes those of us that have this issue able to function. And when you are in that state, that's all that matters. I
Yes.
don't know about you, but uh, I never thought about being my best self. I never thought about how I could grow. I was surviving.
Yeah,
The head
absolutely.
down, like they say in the restaurant world. Keep your head down. I had my head down. I was
Yes.
pushing through, and by being in control.
And what makes it, I don't want to say worse, but what makes it different is that high functioning anxiety in and of itself is not a diagnosis. There's general anxiety disorder, and high functioning anxiety is a subset of that. And so the symptoms, um, they show themselves differently. And so people with high functioning anxiety, people think they're fine. We're accomplishing things. We have all of these accolades, and it seems that everything is together. But nobody understands in our brains that we're thinking the worst case scenario about every single thought, every thought. Like and as you know, when you have it, you can learn to recognize it and start to control it. But yesterday, like I said, I was at a charity event, had on a pair of my favorite stilettos. We had to go up on stage because we were doing some presenting, and we came down. It was one step. There was a stage, the step, and the floor. So there was no need for a handrail. And instantly, my brain says, if you get up and get on that stage, you're going to fall off. So and I just have to like stop it. And it's not just one thought like that. It's just thought after thought after thought. It's not the normal, oh, I might fall off the stage and push through it. It's the constant, everything is going to go wrong thought that you have to learn to just kind of deal with. Like, no, Ebony, you've been walking in heels for years. You can take one step. You're fine. You can take one step, just one
Yeah,
step. And if you do fall, what's the big deal? You laugh and you keep moving.
life goes on.
Life goes on. Yes.
I want to switch gears for a second because I know we're already, holy cow, running down on time, but this really spoke to me. I want to read again from your book, and you said, when I decided to change my major, the dean of the School of Engineering, now make note of that, it's an engineering school, reminded me that as the president of the school's chapter of the National Society of Black Engineers, the students of color needed me as an example. And I love your response. I reminded him that I can still be an example of a leader, but one that did not forget about their own needs. I was reelected as a business major for a second term as president and did just what I said. I remained an example of a leader to the students of color and attended to my needs in the process.
Yes.
Boom.
Yes. That was one of those shining moments in life where I actually cared for myself. You have these moments where you actually do what you're proud of. You actually do what you were sent here to do. And I feel like that was one of those moments where I was like, no, I'm going to take care of me. And so I can be an example taking care of me because I was going to lose it as an engineering major. It was not going
Yeah.
well. But I took care of me. And that felt good. And a few times in my life, and I talk about this in the book as well, those sparks show up, right? I was working on my dissertation and it was like, Ebony, you got to finish, you got to finish, you got to finish. And I said, you know what? I'm different than everybody else in my cohort. I'm the only woman. I'm the only Black woman. I'm the only Black person in my cohort. My life is different. So I have to give myself space and grace to get through this. And I have to let people know, no, my life is different. All of the men that were working on dissertations, and I know there are so many men out there that don't do this, but the men I was working with, their wives were taking care of the children, and their wives were doing everything. So they could just sit and write and research. I could not. I had to be mom and write and research. And so in that moment, I did the same thing. So there are these times where I found myself speaking up for myself, and I reflect on that in the book as well. And that's where that framework came from. Like in those moments, what happened? I took a pause. I stepped back, I analyzed things, and I pushed through that framework to be better for myself. And that's what I wanted to share with the world. Use this to be better for yourself. If
Yeah,
you're better for yourself, you can be better for the world.
exactly. Exactly. Because you have to do that to be better for the world. We all hear the analogy of putting your oxygen mask on first, but
Mhm.
it's absolutely true. You
Yes.
have served the people that you've been called to serve because you stood up for yourself, because you made a decision to do what you knew was the best for you, your health, your professional trajectory.
And I think it's important, Leslie. I've talked about this a lot in interviews. I don't know that I talked about it or I didn't express it to the level necessarily in the book that I do in interviews. It is not about the companies that we work for or the people that we work for. It's about ourselves. Many of us that deal with these situations will deal with them no matter what situation, no matter what organization we work for, no matter who we work for. It is about us, right? So I want to make sure that I say, I had an amazing career, right? I talk about some of the really bad things that happened to me in my career, but I had an amazing career, and now I'm starting career number two. And I still talk to many of the people. I still admire many of the people that I worked with. Many of them are cheering me on, saying like, I'm so happy for you. You've done such an amazing job. I still hear from my peers, my former boss. So I just want to say that I think it is important that people know the situation doesn't make you, and the situation you're in, the environment isn't alone while you're experiencing some of the things you are. Some of it is just you, and you've got to fix you, and then you can impact the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, I'll tell you, there was one part in the book. I don't very often say something out loud when I'm reading, but when I read this, I remember I went, "What? Are you kidding me?" The point where you had taken your pause, you stepped away from your job and you took a leave of absence, and then you extended it
Mhm.
and you were attempting to remain being compensated during that time. And you were given the professional opinion of the fact that they believed this person believed that you needed exposure therapy.
Yep.
That is the most ridiculous thing
Yeah.
I, I've ever read, and I can't even imagine your response when that happened to you.
It was devastating because you give, and I think I said this in the book, you give decades to an organization. And I recognize intellectually that there is a separation between the organization and the short term and long term disability companies.
Yes.
There's definite that, your your HR team is not sitting somewhere deciding whether or not you can be compensated. There's a completely different company. And quite frankly, I believe if my HR team was making the decision would have been yes, because they know you. But you're like, I've given decades of my life, and now I want to work on healing. And you're telling me no, that I need to go back because I need to be exposed to the very things that I'm trying to take a pause from to get myself back in line. And the reality is, I was never paid for those 3 months. And I am just very blessed to be in a situation that my family is fine, and financially, we were able to handle a hit like that. But I think about the people who are not. You know, if you're trying to heal, you're in this space, but financially you can't, you never really get the healing you need because you got to go back to work just so you can eat,
Right.
right? Nobody would question, I've had surgery in the past and had to extend a leave because I wasn't healing as quickly as they expected. They say, typically you'll heal in 6 weeks. Well, then they reevaluate and they're like, you're not healing as quickly. So maybe we need to give you another 3 or 4 weeks. No one questions that. No one questions whether or not you need to heal because they can see the scars. Well, mental and emotional scars you can't see, but that doesn't mean that they're not there. And that doesn't mean that you can put a time frame on me to say, yep, you should be good. It's been 3 months, you're good. No, I was not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or they're telling you, oh no, you're better than you actually think you are. And
Right. Right.
you're the only you're the only one that knows.
Right. And I read like all of the notes, and it's very interesting. The decision was made based off of one day that I went into the doctor for my knee because I was also having problems with my knee. And the doc, anytime you go to the doctor, they ask you a series of questions. They asked me a series of questions. I answered the questions, and the person looking at my file said, "Well, on this day, she was fine." And
Wow.
there's literally, it's in writing. Yeah, and I'm like, well, yeah, because you don't go into the world saying, "Hey, look at me, I'm an emotional wreck," when you're talking about your knee. Why would I?
Exactly.
Yes.
Oh, that's even worse. Wow. So tell us a bit about how it impacts you now to write about the things that make you happy, to be working in a field that is enriching to you. That's not to take away from your great career because I understand it was wonderful. But you're doing the things that you know are important. And how do you feel about that? How does that impact you?
It feels amazing. I had last night, one of my mentees joined me at this charity event, and I had an opportunity to talk to her. And she said, you look amazing. And we talked about how the things that I loved from my previous career, I brought with me. I haven't
Mm,
stopped mentoring. I haven't stopped interacting with the people that I love. But the things that I didn't get to do as much of, I just get to do more of now, right? The concepts are built out for book 2 and 3. Little sneak preview. So book 2 and 3, the concepts are built out. I get to spend a ton of time just talking to really amazing people and pushing in the areas that I loved. Right. It's interesting. So many people have seen me and said, "You look amazing. What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just doing what I love." I think there's a glow about me now that I had lost, not because I hated where I was. I wasn't healthy emotionally, and now I am. And that's how it's impacted me. It's given
yeah,
me um, health in an emotional space.
that that comes through. That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I loved your reflection questions at the end of the book. A
Thank
little bit unusual in how that's done, but personally, I really appreciated it because I like to read through, right?
you.
And when if you're going through a workbook, that's cool. I expect to be stopped by questions, but I really liked the way you put this together. That you had the book. Now we reflect when we get to the end. What made you decide to do the book that way?
I, I'll be honest, I just felt very led to do the things that I did in the book. Some of them I can't say it was anything other than God that said, okay, now it's time to add this. And I'd say, oh, okay, well, let's figure out how to make that work. And so I would just write it. But I think I've always been a person of reflection. And so that's probably why that came out of me in that way, is because now that I've gotten through all of this, I need to reflect. And if that is the space that you're in, you need to stop and reflect on some things as well and ask yourself some questions and know that my answers are not going to be your answers.
Right.
My decisions are not going to be your decisions. My next steps won't be your next steps.
Mm-hmm.
Even though we might use the same framework to get there, we're different people living different lives. And so we're going to have different experiences. But let's just stop and reflect and ask ourselves some really deep questions to help us ponder, what do we do next?
Yeah, that is great. That's great. And what better answer could there be than I was following God's leading? That's wonderful. So, where are you now? What are you doing? And then, how can people find you?
Yes. So right now I am still writing. I write every day. Some things you will never read, right there. They're not for the public.
As it should be.
Yeah, yeah. And so there will be more books coming from me. I also am doing some individual coaching for leaders. And I am doing some consulting for small organizations, helping them either with create strategic plans, because I spent my quite a bit of my career in leadership and creating vision, and so helping small organizations create strategic plans and also help them create leadership development programs that they can push out. Because you get to a point, sometimes you're a small organization. I mean, it's small. You're two people, right? One or two people. Now you're 12, 15, 20, and you're like, uh-oh, what's happening? Now people are reporting to people. How do I help? How do I do this? So I help people do that. And then I'm doing speaking. I love getting a mic in my hand and getting on stage and inspiring people. So I'm doing all of that. People can follow me on all social platforms, but the best way to figure that out instead of trying to write them all down is to go to www.wrotebyme. So that's just WROTEBY.me/Ebony Stone. All the links are there for my socials, for the book, for my website. Everything is there. So that's the easiest way to get everything Ebony.
That's great. And that's a great shout out to Wrote by Me. We
Yes,
love Django Degree and that
he's
amazing
amazing.
platform that he created for authors. If you are an author, you need to check that out
Yes.
and get involved with that. So, Ebony, thank you so much for your time today. This has been amazing.
Thank you
And
for having me.
I want to have you back again and chat a little bit deeper. I don't think we have to wait until the next book comes out in order
Oh,
to do that.
anytime, anytime.
Awesome.
Just let me
Awesome.
know.
Super. Thank you so much. And if you are watching us on Facebook, make sure that you like and share. And if you are watching us on YouTube, like and please subscribe to our channel. So we appreciate your time today and we look forward to seeing you again next week in Author Spotlight. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everybody.